On the broadcast tonight, a convicted murderer in court today. Find out why.
Also ahead, students encouraged to build business in the country.
And will teams live to fight for a championship? We've got the highlights. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Convicted murderer Stephen Dye Stubbs appeared in the Court of Appeal today, hoping to challenge a wiretap. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks for joining us. Stubbs had hoped for the panel to hear his appeal against conviction and sentence in a drug case. However, the matter was pushed back to a later date. You may recall that Stubbs was sentenced to 4 years in prison 2 years ago after a magistrate convicted him of conspiring with others to import almost 4,000 pounds of marijuana into the country back in 2009. His co-accused, Dion Minnis, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During today's proceedings, Stubbs' attorney Muriel DeSeal noted that the main ground of the appeal is that the magistrate erred in law in allowing wiretap evidence in the case. The court then indicated that the Privy Council is expected to rule soon in the Melvin Maycock case on the constitutionality of the Listening Devices Act, and the decision could impact the outcome of Stubbs' appeal. As a result, they adjourned the hearing to May 28th. Police have charged Exuma residents 26-year-old Dimitri Roll, wearing the black shirt, and 18-year-old Giordano Roll Jr., wearing the blue striped shirt, with the February 18th murder of Dwayne Finnegan. Police say 23-year-old Finnegan was at home along with another man when two men entered the residence and shot him several times about the body. In court, the duo was charged with intentionally and unlawfully causing Finnegan's death. They're also accused of robbing the victim of gold jewelry and cash. They were not required to enter a plea. A voluntary bill of indictment will be filed. Following the arraignment, both defendants complained that they were beaten and requested medical attention. They also informed the court through their attorneys that they had received death threats from prison and that persons making the threats promised to carry them out when they got to prison. Magistrate Andrew Forbes noted their concerns and promised to inform the superintendent of prisons. He also ordered they receive medical attention. The case has been adjourned. Still on court news, 29-year-old Eric Stewart in the white t-shirt appeared in the South Street Magistrates Court today, accused of attempting to kill Ronaldo Larimore and Ricardo Smith back on February 22nd. He was not required to enter a plea and a voluntary bill of indictment is expected to be filed. Bail was denied and he was remanded to prison. Following the arraignment, Stewart complained that he had been beaten by police and denied his pain medication. Magistrate Andrew Forbes noted his concerns and ordered that he see a doctor. Stewart was not represented by legal counsel.
In other news, the government's housing program has begun with the construction of new homes. As Carla Palmer tells us, $10 million has been earmarked for the project.
Member of Parliament for Southern Shores, Minister of Housing, the Honourable Kenred Dorset, says a memorandum of understanding has already been signed between the Ministry of Housing and National Insurance for some $10 million to begin the construction of new homes.
The agreement provides for a first tranche of $10 million to be dispersed over a period of time. My ministry is in receipt of the first payment of $2,500,000. We have it in the bank. We intend to build about 120 homes with the $10 million in funding. That's all that could break provision for with the funds, and have begun in the area of Straughns Hill.
He says, unlike the last administration, the government will be constructing homes where infrastructure exists.
Under the F&M administration, they started construction of 566 homes. 566 homes between 2007 to 2012, out of which they completed 450 homes at May 7, 2012. Where they built these homes, Mr. Speaker? There was no infrastructure, no subdivision approval.
Minister Dorsett highlighted the Planning and Subdivision Act 2010, passed by the former administration. He pointed to the legislation and its requirements for subdivisions with more than 2 lots.
So yeah, they built a bunch of homes. Illegally, Mr. Speaker, did not even comply with their act. You brought this to this house. And so I just want those persons to know, if you got a conveyance between the years of 2010 to 2012 before I was minister, take note to section 62 of the act, because it says any conveyance made after the act comes into effect regarding lots not granted prior subdivision approval shall be null and void. Null and void. So I say to you, if that happened to you, come in. Come into my ministry. We will execute the confirmatory conveyances and the confirmatory mortgages to regularize your title.
As for those new homeowners, Minister Dorsett is promising value for money. I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
A group of Bahamians is to benefit from a specialized medical procedure come next month.
During his contribution to the mid-year budget debate, Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Perry Gomez, says the initiative, dubbed Gift of Sight, is being offered free of charge by the Republic of China.
Beginning in a program that starts in March and continuing through mid-April, when a team of doctors and nurses from China, called the Bright Journey Medical Team, will arrive to perform cataract surgery on some 200 patients. This team will work side by side with the Bahamian team of professionals for the success of this project. I must pause here, Mr. Speaker, to extend my heartfelt thanks to the team at the Princess Margaret Hospital for facilitating this project. They have been meeting amongst themselves as well as with their Chinese counterparts.
Minister Gomez is encouraging persons in need of this procedure to sign up.
I would like to use this opportunity particularly to make aware to patients in the Family Islands who have had problems with cataracts and have been unable to access surgery, to present yourselves to the clinics there so that you may get on a list for surgery during the visit of the Chinese in March, the last week of March. Bright Journey not only will perform surgeries, but they will be providing much of the necessary equipment and supplies to facilitate their work here. These items will be used and will be generously donated to the government for continued use.
While some may tout it as a potential agricultural industry for the Bahamas, that is the growth of marijuana for medicinal use, Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources V. Alfred Gray says he's not giving it any consideration, even as the government looks for new agricultural industries with the development of a school devoted to that goal in North Andros. Gray believes it won't be in the best interest of the Bahamas to seriously consider legalizing marijuana for recreational or medicinal use.
There is more to running a country than using whatever means to make money. I think the government of Bahamas must be responsible, not only to this generation, but to generation yet unborn. Unless they could show scientifically that there is some positiveness, not money, don't even talk about the money issue. Marijuana may someday be the plant that cure cancer, but until that time comes, it will be illegal. I also want to go on record as saying that we can't follow Jamaica. Jamaica and Jamaicans have been involved, as I know it, in marijuana and the trade of marijuana illegally for years. And if they want to legalize it, that's their business. The Bahamas can't even follow America. We have a country and a people to develop.
The United States has added detainee abuse to its list of serious human rights problems in the Bahamas in its 2013 Human Rights Report released today. The report covers internationally recognized human rights as set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international agreements. Complaints of police abuse, a purely functioning judicial system leading to delays in trials, and witness intimidation were again listed as other serious human rights problems. It also highlighted other human rights concerns, including poor detention conditions, corruption, violence and discrimination against women, sexual abuse of children, and discrimination based on ethnic descent, sexual orientation, or HIV status. Now, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell told ZNS News he didn't see anything alarming in the report, but did note that there are some inaccuracies. He says, as expected, the Cuban detainee issue was included. However, he disagreed with the conclusions drawn. Minister Mitchell added that the Bahamas can be proud of its human rights record and that government will continue to work to ensure that we have a free, fair, open, transparent, and tolerant society.
Your online activity might not be as private as you may think, as government could be monitoring your internet activity, especially on sites like Facebook.
This as the Data Protection Commission, which is responsible for the protection of an individual's personal data, is now moving steadily with the enforcement of the Data Protection Act 2003.
In fact, the commission brought members of the press together with other relevant agencies today to educate them on the features of the act.
Candido Knowles explains tonight what the Data Protection Commissioner is doing to ensure your personal information isn't being accessed and disseminated in violation of the Act, and how it's expected to coexist with the impending Freedom of Information Act.
It is my job to be aware as to what is going on in the society, to be able to address issues as they arise.
And it's a job Data Protection Commissioner Sharmi Farrington Austin says she takes very seriously. This as there have been a number of cases of personal information being leaked to the press. More recently, we've seen the case of a government spokesman's private information being aired in a local daily.
We understand the press role in being the watchdog of a democracy. However, as protectors of the individual's personal information, it is our job to make sure that the individuals, especially the private individual, that their personal information is protected.
We see it all the time in countries like the United States, where persons running for public office are heavily scrutinized in the press. And it's because in jurisdictions like the U.S., there exists a Freedom of Information Act. But here, where none exists, the Data Protection Act offers protections for not only private citizens, but for public figures as well, whose personal information is being leaked to the public. And while the media must be guided by the law, veteran journalist and attorney-at-law Jeff Lloyd says there's an ever-increasing demand by those the media serve to keep them properly informed.
There is a growing clamor in this country by the parties that we serve, particularly the public, for information that they believe they have a right to, and which the Constitution to some extent provides, so that they could be, one, informed, and so that through that information, they can make better decisions for their own lives. And you know, the most fundamental decision that a citizen ever makes is who is going to govern them, who is going to craft the policies, legislations, resolutions that eventually are going to determine how we govern ourselves.
It's why local journalists have long wanted a Freedom of Information Act. But even when it's enacted, there are still limitations, meaning members of the public might still not be able to get a hold of personal information of an individual presenting for public office whose integrity might be questionable.
If there is a request for public information, it is our job in protecting and balancing those two rights to ensure that when we release the public information, that it does not contain information that specifically relates to the private person without their consent.
Meantime, the DPC is about to acquire the services of attorney Thomas Evans QC, who is expected to help enforce the act and will prosecute those in violation of the law.
If you feel that your personal information is being breached, especially if it's being used, kept undisclosed without your consent, you have a right to report that to our office, and we have a right to investigate that.
Candido Knowles, ZNS Network News.
In our first look at weather, we have this front boundary across the northwest Bahamas. It continues to sink towards the south and could trigger 1 or 2 showers during its passage. But outside of our studios just now, we have mostly cloudy skies. Your temperature 77 degrees, relative humidity 74%. Your winds out of the west-northwest at 6 knots. Your barometric pressure 1,010.6 millibars is 29.84 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned. Temperatures around the Family Islands, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Well, still ahead tonight, students encouraged to build business.
And a championship on the line. Find out if there's going to be a decisive Match 5 in Night League Volleyball. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.